Hi everyone. So now we're getting to the sixth video of the unit, which is the Constitutional Convention. So one of my favorite eras and favorite events and amazing things to discuss. And I was so excited. I made a video and I hit the 10-minute mark and I barely got through it. So I'm going to break this into two videos and I'm going to try to cut all of my ranting because I go off on tangents on this. But if you have questions, ask me in class because we can definitely discuss this more. There's a couple of fun little stories I'll keep in here to maintain interest. All right. So first, actually, let's go back. Let's go back to why we're at the Constitutional Convention. We're here because the Articles of Confederation were not very effective, right? We discussed in class the reasons why they were failing. It didn't allow for a strong central government. It couldn't tax, even though we were in debt. We had trouble communicating with other countries as far as treaties and negotiations go under the Articles. Things just were not off to a good start, and the Articles gave us no way to fix them. Now, remember, the Articles of Confederation was a constitution. It just was not, it's not the Constitution that the U.S. Constitution today. This was like our first Constitution. And when it ended and the new Constitution was put in place, we were a completely different country, like legitimately a completely different country. It was almost like a second revolution or a second Independence Day or whatever you want to call it. So things were getting bad. So the different states were communicating and said, hey, we need to do something about these Articles of Confederation. There's actually something called the Annapolis Convention, where they're like, yeah, we have to do something. So the plan was that they were to meet in Philadelphia, which was sort of like a central spot for all these states, because it still took them a long time to get there back in these days. And they were going to amend the Constitution. Amend the Articles of Confederation. But remember, they weren't amended. They were scrapped, and something new was created. So that was pretty radical. Imagine if our political leaders of today were to do that. So who was there? Well, of course, we have George Washington. You see him standing there so strongly. He did not want to go to the Constitutional Convention. He was done with politics. He was retired. He wanted to live out there in Mount Vernon. And people were writing to him, and he was like, nope, not going to do it. The governor of Virginia, Edmund Randolph, was basically sending him letters saying, listen, I know you're retired, but we need you. The nation needed you for the revolution, and the nation needs you now. Because if this constitutional convention thing doesn't work, our country will fall apart. And, we don't want to blame you. The thing was, they knew that this convention would be risky, that amending the articles would be risky. So if the people knew that Washington was in charge of it, they knew more people would support it. Let's see. So he became the president of the convention. So he just sort of oversaw things, saw how things were going to go, was like the leader. He really did not contribute much as far as ideology or ideas. I mean, little ones, but no major things. So he wasn't like a big contributor to the Constitution in that way. He was more a contributor as far as the Constitution goes. So we also have James Madison of Virginia there. He took really extensive notes. Like, you can know day for day, and you can go online and see this, day for day what happened in the convention by reading his notes. You can see who spoke about what, and all those sorts of things. And because this convention was in secret, he didn't even reveal those notes for a long, long time after the convention did we get to read them. So there were delegates from all these different states, except Rogue Island. You see what we did there, to amend the articles. 70 were appointed, only 55 actually went, and all these people were known as our founding fathers. And yes, the controversy is true. They were all white. They were wealthy. They were educated. They ran in ages 26, which is Jonathan Dayton of New Jersey, to 81, who was the very old at this point, Ben Franklin of Pennsylvania. But he was our wise statesman and was there suffering from the gout and could barely even talk with his teeth at that point in his life. The men who were there all swore secrecy to each other because they knew what they were doing was so radical that if word got out that they were planning to completely change our government and not just amend the articles, how would the people respond, right? You already had the militia protesting outside Independence Hall. You don't need more people protesting outside Independence Hall. There's a story that one night at a tavern, one of the delegates dropped his notes from the day on the floor, and Madison just ripped him apart. Like, you got to be careful with this stuff. You can't let people know what we're up to. And in fact, there's even a letter that discusses their secrecy here. William Pierce sent to George Tucker towards after about a month of the convention, that we are enjoined in secrecy. I dare not say anything. I promised I won't go off into too many tangents, but here's an interesting story. William Pierce was an officer of the Revolutionary War, and he was a delegate from Georgia. He left the convention early to go have a duel with the man, John Aldo, who was mostly about mercantile, like basically business issues. And Hamilton actually stepped in to prevent the duel from happening. And we all know the fate of how Hamilton died. And if you don't, go look it up. You should know that. So Pierce never actually signed the Constitution. George Tucker was from Virginia, and actually he wrote the first biography of Thomas Jefferson. All right, so we've talked a lot and haven't really gotten very far. But do you know that James Madison was a very important figure? I didn't even mention the secretary of it. Ask me in class about William Jackson. It's not worth ranting on about now for your homework, but it's sort of interesting. A lot of students think that Jefferson was there, but he wasn't. That's a big misconception. He was off in Paris, being like a minister for the United States at the time, and he was falling in love with French women and all sorts of crazy things back home. But he still kept in contact with with Madison. And notice Madison's quote here. He knew that we will in some way or another have a powerful effect on our destiny. The people at this convention really knew the significance of what they were doing, and what a lasting impact it would have on our nation and, of course, the world. So there's a lot of issues they had to discuss. And the biggest issue was, well, I shouldn't even say the biggest, there were so many. But does the power of the government belong in the hands of the states or in the federal government? And under the Articles, most of the power relied or was held by the state government. And the delegates knew that these states would be reluctant to give a lot of this up. So they had to deal with that. Now, also, when you create this new government, how will people be represented? Will they be represented equally, like every state has the same amount of people, or by representation? And I have this image of the Galactic Senate from Star Wars because some of the founding fathers feared this. They knew we were going west. They knew our population was going to increase. And if this Constitution was to last, if you have a continent full of people and it's based on reputation, just how big are you willing to let your Congress go to be, right? And there's issues about that today, and there's actually equations about that today, right? Our house today is much bigger than our house was at the beginning, right? Maybe we'll discuss some of those numbers last class. You also have the issues of slavery. Do we want to end it with our Constitution? Because remember, Jefferson wanted to put that in the Declaration, but it was taken out. So is here our chance to do something, or do we still have to wait even further? Okay, so the next video, I'm going to get into the New Jersey plan, the Virginia plan, the 3/5 compromise, and how the Constitutional Convention ended. All right, so I'm going to stop here and get back to this next class. And